Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are be covering some deck lists for Decathlon number 10 on the Edge. So we're winding up the Decathlon events. Hopefully you've been able to get some tokens. I just got my 7th, so I'm going to just be hanging out now because I didn't get the best of 3 draft one, so I can't get 10 anyways. But I got my 2 entries, so I'm happy with that. But for those of you who are trying to get the last ones in, there's 2 events. There's Omniscience Phantom Draft Bot, which just seems like it's going to be hell, but that's whoever draws the most amount of cards that are drafts the most amount of cards that have draw card tacked to them. It's always kind of a who goes first, who kind of draws out, but the one we're going to be looking at today is On the Edge. So bring a 60 card deck with cards from Streets of New Capenna, Dominaria United, and Brothers War sets only. So somewhat like the block constructed of the format. So we're going to go over some deck lists here. Normally what I'd like to do is get stats and stuff like that. We don't have the luxury of stats. This is a made-up format. So these are some ideas. At this point, they're untested, so keep with that in mind. There's going to be some that are very similar, and we'll kind of look at that to their current standard decks. And then others, we've had to make some changes along the edges. So the Invoke Cycle is not legal. Wandering Emperor is not legal. Fable the Mirror Breaker is not legal. So Grixis deck is not legal. Bloodtithe Harvester, Graveyard Trespasser, none of those cards are around. So if we look at the actual set, and we'll take a look, we're going to start off with one of the card decks that's closest to current standard, and that is the Blue-White Soldiers list. So this is very, very similar to the existing deck. Really, we're just replacing Thalia with Guardian and Nubenalia, and then we don't have the dual lands or the channel lands. But we still have 8 duels for an aggressive deck, which is really solid here. I went with like a Harbin package. You can go up 1 extra copy of Harbin, but the thoughts here are go more aggressive, go wide, so we have more 1-drops. We don't have Brutal Cathar in the 3-drop slot. So it's just really soldiers on curve, kind of interact with them that way. No removal, it's just try to get them dead as quick as possible. You could play around the edges. Like, I don't love Guardian and Nubenalia because you don't really take advantage of its graveyard, like things you put into the graveyard. So you can maybe cut some copies of that. There's the 2-mana Exile Planeswalker, or here, it's this one. Like, there's Runic Shot, which is kind of shitty. There's the Exile removal. Come on. 2-mana, where is it? Soul Partition. That might be the one I would probably run. Lay Down Arms, you could try it, but because you're a dual mana base, it's not going to be as good. But really with the core of this deck, and I'll paste all these deck lists so you don't have to worry about copy pasting them, they'll be in the video description. Just play out creatures, curve out, you have a Lord Effect and Valiant Veteran, card draw, pump effects, and then Myrel on the top end, that's just a beast on its own. So that's the Soldiers deck, we'll just kind of bounce through. So Mono Black also has a lot of powerful cards, so you still have pretty much your entirety of the low end of the package compared to the standard. Cut Downs, Go for the Throats, Evolve Sleepers, Tenacious Underdogs, Misery Shadow in here, along with Cult to Conscript. We don't have Invoke Despair, so I was a little bit lower on the curve. We also don't have Graveyard Trespasser. So the Phyrexian Flesh Gorger is your life gainer in the 3-drop slot. That's a little bit difficult to kill. Yogg, 2 copies to get you the card advantage with the cards here. 3 Shieldred, and then 3 Gix Command. You don't have a traditional sweeper effect, but this one will destroy each creature with power 2 or less as a mode, which is really good against like the Soldiers decks, any of the low to the ground aggro decks. Can also force your opponent to sacrifice a bigger creature. It also lets you just rebuy creatures, so if your Shelly dies, if your Gorger dies, anything like that. Even sometimes just putting counters on something and giving it lifelink could be relevant as well. So a lot of utility there. In the mana base, we don't have Takenuma, but we're just playing some Mishra's Foundries in there as well. So that was the Mono Black list. Mono Green, this is something similar I was playing to during the early access event. So it's kind of a pseudo combo-esque deck. So with Gwenna on the board, Defiler, Vigor. The thing is you don't have Augur of Autumn, so you can't necessarily play off the top of your deck. That was the one card that's missing in here, but Gwenna lets you tap and tap, so it generates you a lot of mana. It gets counters on it, gets bigger. You have things like Silverback Elder that gets counters. Gains you life, blows up artifacts, enchantments, gets lines, a lot of utility there. Defiler of Vigor puts counters on things. Titan of Industry on the top end. So it's really kind of like a ramp deck. Bushwhack is both helps you find forests as well as can be a fight spell. Bite down deals damage. Some Galagreeters, Llanowar, Loam Speaker as card advantage as well. I think the modify... No, that's from Kamigawa. I was playing one copy of this with the counters, but you can't play it in here. But this is just like a big chunky green stompy list if you're interested in something like that. Silverback's really powerful on the top end, just blowing up. There's not really Fables going around, but you know, Titan of Industry is a very good card. So from there, mono blue. If you have the mono blue list, it's fairly similar. You still have your Make Disappears, Impulse. We don't have Divide by Zero, or not Divide by Zero. The 1 mana bounce spell. So we're playing Rona's Vortex instead. Slip out the back for protection. We got Negates in here. Make Disappears for counters. Urtai Scorn. Flow of Knowledge for card advantage. Playing some Surge Engines in here as a mana sink and an unblockable threat. You have your Haughty Djinn as well as Tolarian Terror as your threats. And then just 4 Underground Rivers to just offset the Rona's Vortex to sometimes be able to hit its kicker cost. Kind of mixed into there. So Mono Blue is very cheap deck. Even without the Surge Engines, if you just want to try out something, this is only 4 rares, 2 mythics if you want to give out something like that. From there, Mono Red, and there's kind of 2 versions of Mono Red that I was saying. You lose kind of the aggressive threats. You don't have Play with Fire anymore. So just a lot of 1-drops. So you have like Goldhound, that's an evasive 1-drop that can be used as ramp. Swiftspear and Chick obviously are noted. Strangle is just 1 mana removal. Unlucky Witness, we don't have Reckless Impulse or any of the kind of card advantage engines. So I was thinking Unlucky Witness, if it dies, gives you some card advantage. Felding gives you some pseudo card advantage. And then Jaya is kind of your top end, just gives you bodies and gives you card advantage off the top to keep the cards flowing. Mechanized Warfare as the kind of bonus of being this mono red deck, some copies of Squee to go wide, and then just lots of burn and stuff between Lightning Strike, Obliterating Bolt, Strangle kind of mixed in, and a fun of Shivan Devastator on the top end. A couple copies of Mishra's Foundry as well. So there's that like more aggressive mono red, and then this one is kind of the rampy version of it. So there's probably going to be a lot of aggressive decks, so Brotherhood's End seems pretty well positioned. And this is kind of like the Izzet ramp deck, but just mono color. You got Strangles, Bolts, Brotherhood's End, all as removal. Mightstone, Meekstone as a removal spell or card draw. Also helps you ramp, and you get Power Stones from like the Horned Stormseeker. You get it from the Thran Spider. Thran Spider is also card advantage. And then you top out at Cityscape Leveler and Skitterbeam Battalion. You got some copies of Blast Zone as removal. And then I'm just playing a couple Xander's Lounge. If you do Flood Out, you can cycle. And then Visions of Phyrexia gives you both Power Stones and is a card advantage engine as well. So kind of 2 different takes on mono red in terms of like differing ends of the spectrum. And then we have Fight Rigging. So a Jund version that with like the Mishra package in here. So the thoughts here, you got your early aggressive threats or like early aggressive ways to deal with creatures. Try that again. Been a long day. You have ways to deal with early aggressive creatures. Strangle, Cut Down, Go for the Throat as your removal spells. Some ramp in Llanowar Loam Speaker also helps with some color fixing. Tenacious Underdog as your threat. The thing is, you really only have 1 creature that can go 6 into immediately flip Fight Rigging. Your threats for Fight Rigging are like your Titan of Industries, you have Shelly, you have Mishra kind of on that top end as well. You have the Mishra meld with Phyrexian Dragon Engine, and then you have Omnixlis, the adversary as well. You could potentially cut the red here, just go Golgari if you want. Just up the removal, so you'd basically get rid of this here. I like Omnixlis. So you could cut this, you streamline your mana a bit, go up removal spells here, play Phyrexian Flesh Gorger, play another copy of Shieldred, probably play 1 to 2 copies of Gix Command as well, but the mana is really good in these colors, between the Pain Lands as well as the Zeator's Proving Ground. But this is kind of an idea there. So you could kind of build it out in 2 ways. Add your Flesh Gorgers up on removal and just kind of play like Golgari Rock that cheats out big Titans of Industry. And then lastly, I don't know how good this one is, but this seemed like fun. So this is Prototype Midrange. So it's a little hard to see on the curve, but you got these 3 drops here, or like 6, 7 drops. You're, again, just playing the cut down, go for the throat removal package. Phyrexian Missionary can buy back your stuff from the graveyard. It's just like a lot of recursive life-gaining elements to the deck. You could play Shieldred maybe instead of like the Sarah Paragon, stuff like that. But like this comes back from the graveyard. This can get back things from the graveyard to your hand. Extraction Specialist gets back these creatures. Extraction Specialist is probably the one that could be cut, all things considered. Like these aren't great, so you know I don't love this per se. So I'm gonna do, let's do Gix Command, modifying on the spot, and Shieldred. Okay, so these are kind of your 3 drops. Again, like could add lifelink, has lifelink, has lifelink, gains you life. Archangel of Wrath gains you life. You can get back creatures. Just a lot of recursion here, a lot of kind of removal, tough to deal with threats. And then you have for Archangel of Wrath, you have kind of the black-white package, some red sources between the triomes, as well as the Pain Lands mixed into there as well. The mana base, we don't have a Mardu triome, otherwise I'd play 4 of them. You can probably afford to go up like 1 copy of each of these as well. Just instead of basics, but you can play around with the mana base if you want, but that's kind of prototype aggro as well, or mid-range. There's probably more decks you can look at. There's probably a portal deck if we look at cards that are coming out, so you can keep, this one's going to be a little tough because your Fable the Mirror Breakers, your kind of best engine, this is a very good card, this is a very good card in the format. You're kind of losing all this. So you keep your top end components, even Farewell, going. So you're kind of stuck with, like, you have Repair Recharge that you can get the Portal Phyrexia. But outside of Elder Dragon War, you could have the, like, Initiate cards, but you're not going to deal with the early game as well. These cards buy a lot of time and life in the meantime. But that's pretty much it. Let me know what you do well with. I'll post these deck lists in the video description. Hopefully they give you some inspiration. I think if you're going to choose between 2, Soldiers or Mono Black are the closest to the actual standard decks, and you'll probably run over folks pretty hard with those ones there. Mono Black has a lot of options in terms of removal. Soldiers is super linear and powerful in that regard, but this is basically a constructed deck to begin with, notwithstanding Invoke Despair, and some of the Mono Black decks have even passed on Invoke Despair to just go lower on the curve in terms of aggression with Gix. Flesh Gorger is very good. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you have a great one. And if you haven't done so already, consider subscribing to the channel. Free and easy way to show your support to the channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great one.